Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku got accepted into UA High without a quirk. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in the classroom tasted like chalk dust and ozone. It was a familiar flavor, one that Izuku Midoriya associated with the crushing weight of reality. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your future, the teacher announced, slapping a stack of papers onto his podium. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of Aldera Junior High. I could pass out these career aptitude tests. He paused, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. But why bother? I know you all want to go into the hero track. The room exploded. Quite literally. Hands transformed into rocks, eyes extended on stalks, and weak telekinesis sent pencils floating. It was a chaotic display of biological disparity, a celebration of the genetic lottery that 80% of the world had won. Izuku sat still. He kept his head down, his hands gripping the edges of his desk until his knuckles turned white. He tried to make himself small, to become a part of the furniture. In a world of superheroes, invisibility would have been a useful quirk, but he didn't have invisibility. He didn't have telekinesis. He didn't have pyrokinesis. Hey, teach! A rough, arrogant voice cut through the noise. Katsuki Bakugo leaned back in his chair, feet resting on the desk. Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted D-lister. I'm the real deal. The class jeered, but Bakugo ignored them, small explosions popping like firecrackers in his palms. The smell of caramel and nitroglycerin wafted through the room, the scent of power. Oh, right, the teacher said, glancing at his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, aren't you? The murmurs turned into gasps. UA High. The summit. The holy ground where All Might had walked. That's right. Bakugo grinned, a feral expression that promised violence. I aced the mock exams. I'm going to be the only one from this backwater school to make it. I'll surpass All Might and become the top hero. My name will be etched in the history books. Oh, the teacher interrupted, his voice devoid of empathy. Speaking of UA, didn't Midoriya apply there too? The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Izuku flinched. He felt the collective gaze of 30 students bore into the back of his neck. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then laughter. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. They got rid of the rule against it. But come on, there's never been a quirkless hero. Izuku stood up, his legs shaking. They removed the rule. It's not impossible. There's just no precedent, that's all. Boom. Bakugo was there in an instant. His hand slammed onto Izuku's desk, the explosion blasting Izuku backward. He tumbled out of his chair, hitting the floor hard. Deku! Bakugo loomed over him, smoke curling from his palms. You're worse than the rejects. You're quirkless. You're nothing. You think you can rub shoulders with me? No, Kaken, wait. Izuku scrambled back, his back hitting the wall. I'm not trying to compete with you. It's been my dream since I was little. I won't know unless I try. Try? Bakugo sneered, his red eyes glowing with contempt. Try what? Taking the entrance exam just to die. What can you do? You're a liability. The class continued to laugh. The teacher merely shuffled his papers, waiting for the disruption to end. Nobody helped. Nobody ever helped. In this society, power was the only currency, and Izuku was bankrupt. The rest of the day was a blur of gray misery. When the final bell rang, Izuku moved on autopilot. He packed his bag, checking his phone for hero news. The incident at Tatooine Station this morning was trending, Kamui Woods and Empty Lady. He needed to write down the specs on Empty Lady's size manipulation, specifically the collateral damage ratio. He reached for his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. A hand snatched it away. We're not done yet, Deku, Bakugo said, holding the notebook up. Two of his lackeys stood behind him, snickering. Give it back, Kaken, Izuku pleaded, his voice trembling. Hero Analysis? Bakugo read the cover. Ha! You really are delusional. Clap. Bakugo sandwiched the notebook between his hands. An explosion detonated. When he pulled his hands away, the notebook was charred, smoking, and ruined. Ah! Izuku gasped. Here! Bakugo tossed the burnt book out the open window. Izuku watched in horror as it plummeted into the koi pond below. Most top-tier heroes have stories about their school days, Bakugo said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. I want my origin story to be perfect. I don't want people knowing I went to the same school as a pebble like you. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. It was hot. So, don't apply to you, nerd? Izuku couldn't speak. He just stood there, shaking, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. He couldn't fight back. He had no way to fight back. Bakugo walked to the door, then stopped. He glanced back, a cruel smirk on his face. You know, if you want to be a hero that badly, there might be a quick way. Izuku looked up. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The door slid shut. Izuku stood in the empty classroom for a long time. The sunlight turned from harsh white to golden orange. His shoulder burned where Bakugo had touched him, but his chest hurt far more. Idiot, Izuku thought, wiping his eyes aggressively. If I actually jumped, that would be inciting suicide. You could get arrested, Kaken. He walked down to the courtyard. The notebook was floating in the pond, nibbled on by koi fish. He fished it out, the water dripping from the charred pages. Stupid fish, he muttered, clutching the soggy book to his chest. This isn't food. He began the walk home. It was a route he knew by heart, taking him under a highway overpass. He muttered to himself, trying to salvage the day. Whatever. I'll just dry it out. I can still read the notes. I just have to keep going. Just keep going. He didn't hear the manhole cover slide open behind him. He didn't hear the wet, squelching sound of fluid mass gathering. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling voice hissed. Izuku turned around. His vision was filled with green sludge. Liquid despair. Don't worry, the villain whispered, lunging forward. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. The sludge hit him. It forced itself into his mouth, his nose. Izuku clawed at the fluid, but his hands passed right through. It was like trying to punch water. He couldn't breathe. His lungs burned. I'm dying. The thought was clinical, detached. I'm going to die here. Nobody knows I'm here. I didn't even get to try. His vision began to spot with darkness. The villain was muttering about All Might, about escaping. Izuku's strength faded. His struggles grew weak. Mom. I'm sorry. Just as the darkness threatened to take him completely, the manhole cover flew into the air with the force of a cannonball. I am here. A figure blocked out the light at the end of the tunnel. A massive silhouette. A punch that changed the weather. The air pressure alone blasted the sludge apart. Izuku was thrown back, gasping, coughing up fluid, his eyes wide. He saw the villain scattered across the concrete walls, and standing there, bathed in the fading light, was him, the symbol of peace. All Might. Izuku passed out. When he woke up, he was being slapped lightly on the cheek. Hey! Hey! Thank goodness! Izuku's eyes snapped open. The massive blonde man was leaning over him. You're okay. Excellent. All Might laughed, a sound that vibrated in Izuku's bones. Apologies for getting you caught up in my justice ing. I was chasing this guy, but I dropped the soda bottles. Ha ha ha! Izuku scrambled back, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was real. He was real. All Might. You. Can I get an autograph? He reached for his soggy notebook. All Might had already signed it. The signature took up 2 whole pages. I must be going. All Might announced, stretching. Evil doesn't wait, and neither can I. Wait. Izuku scrambled to his feet. I have to ask you something. No time, young citizen. All Might crouched, his powerful leg muscles tensing. Please! As All Might launched himself into the sky, Izuku did the only thing his desperate mind could conceive. He jumped. He grabbed onto the hero's leg. Hey! What are you doing? Let go! All Might shouted, realized he had a teenager attached to his limb mid-flight. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed, the wind whipping his face, distorting his cheeks. Oh. Right. They landed on a rooftop a few minutes later. Izuku collapsed, his legs jelly, his heart rate dangerously high. That was reckless, kid, All Might chastised, though he looked weary. He placed the soda bottles containing the sludge villain into his pocket. I really have to go. Wait. Izuku gasped, reaching out. Just one question. Please. All Might stopped. Smoke began to rise from his body. Izuku stared at the ground. This was it. The question that had haunted him for 10 years. The question that would define his existence. I don't have a quirk, Izuku started, his voice small. I'm often told I'm useless. That I can't do anything. He clenched his fists. But I want to save people. I want to be like you. Can. He looked up, tears in his eyes. Can someone without a quirk become a hero like you? Silence stretched across the rooftop. The wind howled, lonely and cold. When Izuku looked at All Might, the hero was gone. In his place stood a skeletal man, gaunt and sharp-angled, coughing up blood. What? Izuku shrieked. An impostor? I assure you, I am All Might, the man wheezed, wiping blood from his chin. He sat down heavily against the railing. He lifted his shirt, revealing a horrific scar that looked like a spiderweb of purple, mangled tissue. It took up half his torso. Izuku gasped, horrified. That's 5 years ago, All Might said, his voice deep but weak. Respiratory system destroyed. Stomach removed. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. 5 years ago? Was that the fight with Toxic Chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled dryly. But no. That punk couldn't scratch me. This was something else. Something kept under wraps. All Might looked at Izuku. His blue eyes were sunken, serious, and devoid of the usual commercial brightness. Pro-heroes are always risking their lives, All Might said softly. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. I see you have the spirit, kid. But honestly? He looked away, out toward the city skyline. No. I don't think you can become a hero without a quirk. The world stopped. Izuku felt like he had been punched in the gut, harder than Bakugo ever had. It's not just about bravery, All Might continued, his voice heavy with a grim reality. It's about physics. It's about liability. If you rush in without power, you're just another person who needs saving. The police receive plenty of ridicule, but they do good work. It's a fine profession. All Might stood up, coughing again. He walked toward the door leading downstairs. It's good to dream, young man. But you have to be realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone on the roof. Realistic. The word echoed in his mind. He walked to the railing. He looked down at the streets below. Cars looked like toys. People looked like ants. Take a swan dive. No, Izuku whispered. He backed away from the edge. No. He walked down the stairs. His legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. He walked out of the building and began the trek home. He felt numb. A vast, white emptiness had replaced the anxiety. The dream was dead. The number one hero had signed the death certificate. Izuku walked without looking where he was going. He just wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and sleep until the world ended. Boom! An explosion rocked the street. Izuku flinched, snapping out of his daze. He was in the Tatooine shopping district. A crowd had gathered. Smoke billowed into the sky. A villain attack? I should go check. No. He turned away. What's the point? I'm not a hero. I'm just a fanboy with a death wish. I should go home. But his feet didn't move. He heard screaming. It's a kid! The villain has a kid hostage. Where are the heroes? They can't get close. The slime is everywhere. Slime? Izuku's blood ran cold. He turned back. He pushed through the crowd, his breath hitching. In the center of the alley, surrounded by flames, was the sludge villain. The same one All Might had captured. The bottle must have fallen when Izuku grabbed his leg. This is my fault. The thought paralyzed him. I did this. I distracted All Might. I made him drop the bottle. The heroes were standing around, helpless. Death arms couldn't punch the sludge. Kamui Woods couldn't get close to the fire. Empty lady couldn't fit in the alley. They were waiting for someone with the right quirk. Get off me! A muffled scream. Izuku looked into the heart of the fire. Buried in the muck, struggling violently, was Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's. They weren't filled with arrogance or anger. They were filled with pure, unadulterated terror. He was suffocating. He was dying, and the heroes were watching. Be realistic. Izuku's notebook felt heavy in his hand. You can't be a hero without a quirk. Bakugo's eyes pleaded. Move. Izuku didn't think. The numbness vanished, replaced by a searing spike of adrenaline. He broke the police line. Hey! Stop! You'll get yourself killed! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He sprinted toward the fire. His mind, usually a chaotic storm of anxiety, suddenly went cold and sharp. The villain is fluid. Physical strikes are useless. He's suffocating Kaken. He needs a body to hide in. The eyes and mouth are the only solid points of vulnerability. The villain saw him coming. You again? The villain raised a tendril to smash him. He's slow. Big wind up. Izuku slid on the pavement, ducking under the strike. The heat was unbearable. His uniform felt like it was melting to his skin. He needed a projectile. He had nothing, except his backpack. Izuku unslung his yellow backpack, grabbed the strap, and swung it with every ounce of hysterical strength he possessed. Let him go! The bag flew through the air. It wasn't a super move. It wasn't a smash. It was a bag full of textbooks. The corner of a hardcover math book slammed directly into the villain's bulging, watery eye. Arg! The villain flinched, his hold loosening for a fraction of a second. It was enough. Bakugo gasped, inhaling a tiny pocket of air. Izuku didn't stop. He scrambled forward, ignoring the flames licking at his shoes. He reached the sludge mass. He didn't try to punch it. He plunged his hands into the muck, finding the fabric of Bakugo's shirt, and he clawed at the sludge around Bakugo's mouth. Deku? Bakugo wheezed. Why, my legs moved on their own. Izuku screamed, tears streaming down his face as he clawed at the villain. I don't know why. You looked like you were asking for help. The villain recovered. The eye healed. A massive wave of sludge rose up, forming a towering hammer of death above the two boys. You pest! The villain roared. I'll crush you both. Izuku looked up. He didn't close his eyes. He saw death coming. I tried, he thought. At least I tried. Dust scattered. A shockwave extinguished the flames in an instant. I really am pathetic. All Might was there. He had pushed past his limit. Blood sprayed from his mouth, but his smile was there. He blocked the sludge with one arm, grabbing the boys with the other. I told you off, but I wasn't living up to my own ideals. Pros are always risking their lives. Detroit. Smash! The punch changed the air pressure of the entire district. The sludge villain was vaporized into harmless droplets. Clouds parted above the city. Rain began to fall. The aftermath was a strange reversal of reality. Bakugo sat with a blanket around his shoulders, being praised by the heroes. You have an amazing quirk, kid. You held out for so long. Be a sidekick at my agency. Izuku sat on the pavement a few meters away, being scolded. Are you insane? Death Arms yelled, pointing a finger in Izuku's face. You have no quirk. You could have gotten yourself killed. You interfered with hero work. Do you have a death wish? Kamui Woods shook his head. That was reckless and stupid. You're lucky All Might stepped in. Izuku sat there, taking it. He nodded. He apologized. I'm sorry. I wanted to help. Leave the saving to the pros, kid. Death Arms grunted. Izuku stood up. He bowed. He walked away. He didn't look at Bakugo. He just walked. The sun had set. The streetlights flickered on. Izuku walked home in the damp silence of the evening. His uniform was singed. His throat hurt. Deku! Izuku stopped. He turned around. Bakugo came running down the street, panting. He stopped a few feet away, hunched over. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled, his voice cracking. I didn't need you. I was fine. Don't look down on me. You're a quirkless failure. I don't owe you anything. Bakugo spun around and stomped away. Izuku watched him go. For the first time, Bakugo's words didn't hurt. They felt distant. Izuku turned and kept walking. He expected All Might to appear. He expected the hero to pop out from a corner and say, "I take it back. You have the heart of a hero." He walked past the corner. No All Might. He walked past the park. No All Might. He reached his apartment complex. No All Might. Izuku walked up the stairs to his door. He unlocked it. "Izuku!" His mother Inko rushed to him, tears in her eyes. "I saw the news. Are you okay? You were so close to the villain." She hugged him. Izuku hugged her back. He felt hollow. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm really tired. I'm going to bed." He went to his room. He sat at his desk. He stared at the wall. All Might wasn't coming. The realization settled in his chest like a stone. He meant what he said. Being brave isn't enough. Izuku looked at his All Might posters. The grinning face of the symbol of peace. For the first time in his life, looking at that smile didn't make him feel safe. It made him feel lonely. He's right, Izuku thought. I can't be a hero without power. He opened his drawer. He pulled out a fresh notebook. He picked up a pen. His hand hovered over the page. If I can't be a hero with power, then what am I? He thought about the sludge villain. He thought about the weakness in the eye. He thought about the fluid dynamics. He thought about the heroes who stood by and did nothing because they were waiting for the right match. They were useless, a dark voice whispered in his mind. They had quirks, and they were useless. I had nothing, and I created an opening. Izuku began to write. He didn't write about how cool the heroes were. He didn't write about their flashy moves. He wrote about their failures. Kamui Woods, lack of fire retardant measures ensued. Ineffective in urban fires. Death arms, pure strength, zero utility against amorphous foes. Linear thinker. All Might, time limit. Injury confirmed. The symbol is dying, he wrote furiously. The pen dug into the paper. If I want to save people, I can't wait for a miracle. All Might isn't going to give me a quirk. Nobody is coming to save me. He looked at his hands. They were scarred from the clawing. They were weak. Physics, All Might had said. Fine, Izuku thought, a cold resolve hardening in his eyes. I'll master physics. He stood up. He grabbed the All Might poster above his bed and tore it down. He didn't crumple it. He just rolled it up and put it in the closet. I'm going to be a hero, Izuku whispered to the empty room. And I'm going to do it without you. 10 months later, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of trash. Tires, broken appliances, scrap metal. Years of illegal dumping had turned the coastline into a landfill. At 5 a.m., the sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon. The seagulls were screaming, and so was Izuku. He was dragging a rusted safe across the sand. A rope was tied around his waist, digging into his hips. His muscles burned. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. Move! He grunted, digging his heels into the sand. The safe inched forward. Izuku collapsed, gasping for air. He was shirtless, sweat gleaming on his skin. He had changed. The baby fat was gone, replaced by lean, whipcord muscle. His hands were calloused and rough. He rolled onto his back and looked at the sky. For 10 months, this had been his life. No video games. No hanging out. Just school, study, train, sleep. He pulled a notebook out of his bag. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 14. This one was different. It was hardcover. Tabs organized the sections: biomechanics, structural engineering, martial arts theory, quirk psychology. He flipped to the page titled 0 Pointers. The entrance exam, he read. Robots. Rumor has it they use localized sensors in the neck joints. If I can't punch through the armor, I have to dismantle the joints. He sat up and drank from a water bottle. He wasn't training to inherit a power. He was training to survive. He had joined a dojo in the next town over, a cheap, rundown place that taught street practical judo and jiu-jitsu. The sensei was an old quirkless man who hated heroes. He had taught Izuku how to use an opponent's force against them. Dislocate. Choke. Break. Izuku looked at the pile of trash he had cleared. It was a small section of the beach, maybe a quarter of the total mess. He hadn't cleared the whole beach like a superhero. He was just one kid, but looking at the patch of clean sand, seeing the ocean waves actually touching the shore, it was enough. I'm ready, he said. The morning of the UA entrance exam was bright and clear. Izuku stood in front of the mirror. The black Gakurin uniform of Aldera Junior High felt tight around the shoulders. He adjusted the collar. Izuku? His mother called from the kitchen. Breakfast is ready. He walked out. Inko Midoriya looked at her son. She had watched him change over the last year. He had become quieter, more intense. The frantic muttering had turned into silent observation. She was terrified for him. But she also saw the fire in his eyes, a cold, steady blue flame that hadn't been there before. Here, she said, handing him a bowl of rice and fish. Eat up. You need the energy. Thanks, Mom. He ate quickly, methodically. Izuku, she said softly. You know, even if you don't get in, I'll get in, he said. He didn't say it with arrogance. He said it like he was stating the weather. He stood up and grabbed his yellow backpack. It was heavier now. Inside, alongside his pencils, were a wrench, a roll of industrial duct tape, and a small, collapsible metal baton he had made from scrap parts at the beach. He wasn't sure if they'd let him use them, but he'd try. I'm leaving. Good luck. Izuku walked out the door. The world seemed sharper today. He noticed the structural integrity of the bridge he crossed. He calculated the probable quirk type of the mailman based on the slight mutation of his ears. He arrived at the massive glass gates of UA High. The structure was imposing. It was a fortress. Crowds of students were walking in. He saw students with wings, students made of stone, students with engines in their legs. He saw Bakugo walking ahead, hands in pockets. Bakugo didn't look back. They hadn't spoken since the sludge incident. An uneasy truce of silence. Izuku took a deep breath. He stepped through the gates. He was so focused on analyzing the gate's sensor array that he didn't look down. He tripped over a crack in the pavement. Damn it. Clumsy. He braced for impact, preparing to roll into a breakfall. He didn't hit the ground. He was floating. Are you okay? Izuku looked up. A girl with a round face and brown bobbed hair was smiling at him. Her hand was hovering near his chest. I used my quirk to stop you, she said cheerfully, tapping her fingertips together. It's bad luck to trip, right? Izuku gently rotated in the air until his feet touched the ground. She released him. Oh, Izuku said. He analyzed her instantly. Touch-based gravity negation. Pads on fingertips. Emitter type. Likely has a weight limit or nausea drawback based on inner ear equilibrium. Thanks, he said. His voice was steady. A year ago, he would have been a blushing mess. Now, he just nodded. Gravity manipulation? Useful for rescue and debris removal. Good luck. The girl blinked, surprised by the blunt assessment. Thanks. I'm Ochako Uraraka, Izuku Midoriya. Good luck, Midoriya. She waved and ran off toward the orientation hall. Izuku watched her go. Nice girl. She'll be competition. He walked into the building. The orientation was loud. President Mike was screaming, Welcome to the live show. Everybody say hey. Silence. Izuku sat in the dark auditorium, his eyes fixed on the pamphlet. 3 types of robots. 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer. Destruction required. Problem. I cannot destroy metal with my bare hands. He frowned. This was designed to weed him out. The test was biased toward emitters and transformation types. Excuse me. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up in the audience. May I ask a question? Shoot. The pamphlet says there are 4 types of villains. If this is a misprint, it is a great shame for UA, the top school in Japan. And you, the boy pointed a finger directly at Izuku. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, you should leave. Every head turned to Izuku. Izuku looked at the boy. Tenya Ida? Somei Junior High. Likely an engine quirk based on the exhaust pipes on his calves. Izuku didn't shrink away. He stood up slowly. I'm not muttering, Izuku said, his voice carrying through the quiet hall without shouting. I'm analyzing the enemy. And the 4th robot. Izuku looked at Present Mike. Is a gimmick, isn't it? An obstacle to be avoided? Because giving points for a target that can't be beaten would be illogical. Present Mike grinned. Bingo! Listener 2234 gets it. The fourth villain is a 0-pointer. It's just an obstacle. Run away from it. Ida looked stunned. He bowed stiffly. I see. My apologies. Izuku sat down. He felt Bakugo's glare burning into the side of his head, but he ignored it. 0-pointer. Avoid. 1, 2, 3 pointers. Destroy. How? He gripped his knees. I have to find the off switch. Battle Center B. The gates to the mock city were massive. Izuku stood in a crowd of examinees. He was wearing a simple green tracksuit he had bought cheap. He adjusted the wristbands on his arms. They hid small metal plates he had stitched in for blocking. He saw Uraraka nearby. She looked nervous. She's breathing too fast. Hyperventilation risk. Izuku started to walk toward her, maybe to offer a breathing tip, but Ida blocked his path. She is trying to focus, Ida said sternly. Are you planning to distract her too? Izuku looked at Ida. You're stiff. Your engines rely on leg movement. You should stretch your hamstrings or you'll tear something. Ida blinked. Start. Present Mick's voice boomed from the tower. The other students froze. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 Izuku was the first one moving. He didn't have a quirk to charge up. He just ran. He sprinted past the stunned students, his boots pounding the pavement. First advantage, initiative. He turned a corner into the fake city. A 1-pointer robot rolled out. It was fast, a unicycle design with armed pincers. Target acquired. Izuku didn't stop. He ran straight at it. It's aiming high. Center of gravity is the wheel. Izuku slid. He used the momentum of his sprint, dropping to the ground like a baseball player sliding into home base. He kicked the robot's wheel strut with the steel-toed sole of his boot. Crack! The metal bent. The robot wobbled, its gyroscope failing. It tipped over, crashing into the wall. Izuku scrambled up. The robot was down, but not destroyed. It was trying to right itself. Izuku saw the wiring exposed at the neck joint where the head had twisted. He grabbed the wire and ripped it out. The lights in the robot's eyes died. 1 point. Harder than I thought, Izuku panted. My foot hurts. He heard explosions behind him. The others had caught up. A laser blasted a robot to pieces. A guy with a naval laser. Izuku kept moving. He stuck to the alleys. He avoided the open streets where the big quirk users were decimating everything. He found a 2-pointer. A scorpion-like drone. It lunged at him. Izuku grabbed a loose metal pipe from the ground. The city was littered with debris. He jammed the pipe into the scorpion's tail mechanism. It screeched, jamming. Izuku climbed onto its back and stomped on the sensor array. 3 points. Time ticked by. Izuku was exhausted. His knuckles were bleeding. He had taken down 5 robots. 12 points. It wasn't enough. He heard people shouting scores. 40. 52. He was falling behind. The gap between those with power and those without was becoming a canyon. Think. He saw a 3-pointer. Massive. Missile launchers. Izuku hid behind a car. He couldn't fight that. Another student, a guy with multiple arms, punched it. The robot dented but didn't break. Izuku saw the fuel line. No. Too dangerous. He ran. He needed more points. He needed a miracle. And then, the ground shook. A shadow fell over the city. The 0-pointer. It was colossal. It towered over the skyscrapers. Its tread crushed a building like it was cardboard. Dust billowed. Debris rained down. Run! It's huge! That's not an obstacle, that's a monster! The examinees turned and fled. It was a stampede. Izuku turned to run with them. It was the logical choice. It was the survival choice. Ouch! A voice cut through the chaos. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Uraraka was trapped. A piece of rubble had pinned her leg. She was right in the path of the 0-pointer. The robot raised a massive metal foot. The other students were running away. Ida was running away. Be realistic. Izuku looked at the massive robot. He looked at Uraraka. He had no strength quirk. He had no flight. He had a metal pipe and bleeding knuckles. You can't be a hero without a quirk. Shut up, Izuku snarled at the voice in his head. He turned around. He ran toward the monster. He didn't jump. He didn't scream a smash. He looked at the ground. The road was torn up. He saw a large metal plate, likely a piece of siding from a destroyed building, propped up against a chunk of concrete near the robot's path. A ramp. No, not a ramp. A lever. Izuku sprinted to the metal plate. He jammed his metal pipe under it to secure the angle. The robot's massive tread was coming down. Hey! Izuku screamed, waving his arms. He grabbed a rock and threw it at the robot's face. It did nothing, but the sensors tracked the movement. The robot hesitated for a microsecond, adjusting its path slightly toward the annoyance. That was what Izuku needed. The tread came down. Not on Uraraka, but on the edge of the metal plate Izuku had rigged. The plate acted like a caltrip. It wedged itself into the treads. The gears ground against the metal. Sparks showered down like fireworks. Screech! The internal mechanism of the zero-pointer shrieked. The jam caused the massive leg to lock up mid-step. The robot's momentum carried it forward, but its base stopped. It tripped. The Colossus groaned, tilted, and crashed sideways into the adjacent building, missing Uraraka by 10 meters. The impact knocked Izuku off his feet. He rolled, covering his head as glass and dust rained down. Silence returned to the street. The zero-pointer twitched, smoke pouring from its leg, but it didn't rise. Izuku coughed, waving the dust away. He crawled over to Uraraka. Are you okay? He rasped. Uraraka was staring at him with wide eyes. You stopped it. I jammed it, Izuku corrected, grabbing the rubble on her leg. Help me lift this. Together, they heaved the stone off her leg. Time's up, the siren wailed. Izuku collapsed onto his back. He stared at the sky. His body ached. He was bleeding. He had dirt in his mouth. 12 points, he whispered. Tears leaked from his eyes, cutting tracks through the dust on his face. I failed. He had trained for 10 months. He had analyzed everything. And in the end, 12 points wasn't enough to get into the hero course. He felt Uraraka's hand on his shoulder, but he couldn't look at her. He had saved her, yes. But the test was about destroying villains. He closed his eyes. I guess you were right, All Might. 1 week later, Izuku sat at the dinner table. The fish was cold. He hadn't taken a bite. Izuku, his mother said softly. The letter should be here soon. It doesn't matter, Izuku said, his voice dull. I calculated the cutoff. Even with high written scores, the practical is weighted 60/40ths. 12 points is failing. He stood up. I'm going to study. I can still apply to general education or a technical school. He walked to his room. The doorbell rang. Izuku! It's here! Izuku froze. He walked back to the living room. His mother held a white envelope with the UA seal. He took it. It felt light. He walked into his room and closed the door. He sat at his desk. He stared at the envelope for 10 minutes. Just get it over with. He tore it open. A small metal disc fell out. A hologram projected onto the wall. I am here. As a projection, Izuku jumped back. All Might? The hero appeared on the screen, wearing a yellow suit. He looked healthy, buff, young Midoriya. It has been a while. You did good on the written exam. Perfect score. Impressive. Izuku watched, his heart pounding. But the practical? 12 villain points. That is low. Very low. In fact, history has never seen a student pass with such a low combat score. Izuku looked down. I know. You don't have to rub it in. However, All Might leaned into the camera. A hero course that rejects those who save others is no hero course at all. Izuku looked up. The video changed. It showed a clip of Uraraka in a room, speaking to present mic. Please. Can I give my points to him? He saved me. He didn't have any points, but he jumped in when everyone else ran. Izuku's breath hitched. She tried to negotiate for you. But there is no need. The screen returned to All Might. You risked your life against a foe you could not defeat to save a life. That is the essence of heroism. A scoreboard appeared. Villain points, 12. Rescue points, 60. The exam wasn't just about destruction. It was about action. All Might extended a hand toward the screen. Izuku Midoriya. You passed. Izuku trembled. He grabbed the edge of his desk. The tears came, hot and fast. Come, young Midoriya. This is your Hero Academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the dark room, the silence broken only by his ragged breathing. He looked at his hands. The same quirkless hands he had been born with. I did it, he whispered. He grabbed his notebook. He opened it to the first page of volume 15. He wrote one sentence. I am here. The acceptance letter had been a heavy thing, physically light but metaphysically possessing the density of a collapsed star. For the weeks leading up to April, it sat on Izuku Midoriya's desk, a silent sentinel watching him sleep, study, and train. Rescue points. The concept gnawed at the edges of his analytical mind. He had spent 10 months turning his body into a weapon of efficiency, studying structural weaknesses and joint locks, only to pass because he had jammed a piece of scrap metal into a tread. It felt like a fluke. It felt like a clerical error, but the uniform hanging on his door was real. The gray blazer with the teal stripes, the red tie that he still hadn't figured out how to knot properly. It was the skin of a hero, and today, he had to wear it. Izuku stood before his mirror, his hands trembling slightly as he buttoned the shirt. He looked different than he had a year ago. The collar of the shirt felt tight against the neck that had thickened with muscle. His jawline was sharper. But the eyes, green, wide, and perpetually anxious, remained the same. Izuku? You're going to be late. His mother's voice drifted from the kitchen, laced with a mix of pride and terrifying anxiety. Inko Midoriya had accepted his path, but that didn't mean she slept well. Coming. Izuku grabbed his yellow backpack. He paused, looking at the bottom drawer of his desk where his support gear prototypes lay. Weighted knuckles, a collapsible baton, steel-reinforced insoles. Rule 3, Section 4 of the Student Handbook. No unauthorized support items during standard curriculum unless specified by a medical waiver or course requirement. He left the weapons. He took the notebooks. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 15. He walked out into the spring air. The cherry blossoms were falling, painting the sidewalk in strokes of pale pink. It was the kind of morning that usually signaled the start of a romantic comedy, or a slice-of-life anime. For Izuku, it felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a steak necklace. The train ride was suffocating. He stood near the door, clutching the strap of his bag. He overheard 2 students from another school whispering, "Did you see the UA admissions list online?" Yeah, the practical scores were insane. Bakugo got like 70-something. But who's the guy at the bottom? Midoriya? 7 written, 0 villain points? 0? How did he even get in? Must be a legacy kid. Or a bribe. Izuku shrank into his collar. 0. The number defined him. In a society built on the binary of power and powerless, 0 was a vacuum. It was nothingness. And nature abhorred a vacuum. UA High School. The hero course. The hallway was massive. The doors were towering, designed to accommodate students with gigantification quirks or mutation types. Izuku stood before the door marked 1A. This is it. The elite. The top 1%. He took a deep breath, trying to slow his heart rate. Assess the threat level. Expect hostility. Kaken is in there. Ida is in there. Uraraka is in there. He slid the door open. Don't put your feet on the desk. The shout hit him like a physical blow. Ha! Izuku flinched. The scene before him was exactly what he had feared. Tenya Ida, the stiff, robotic boy from the entrance exam, was chopping his hand in the air, reprimanding Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was lounging at his desk, boots resting comfortably on the pristine surface, a look of utter boredom and malice on his face. Don't you think that's rude to the UA upperclassmen and the people who made this desk? Ida demanded, his glasses gleaming. Nope, Bakugo sneered. What junior high did you go to, you side character? I attended Somei Junior High. My name is Tenya Ida. Somei? An elite, Bakugo scoffed. So you've got to stick up your ass. I'll have fun crushing you. Crushing me? Are you really aiming to be a hero? Ida looked appalled. Izuku tried to back out of the room, but his shoe squeaked against the linoleum. Both heads snapped toward him. "Oh," Ida said. "It's you." Bakugo froze. His red eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of pure, unadulterated rage. The air temperature seemed to rise. Deku. The name was a curse, a growl, a promise of violence. Morning, Kaken, Izuku squeaked, his tactical composure evaporating instantly in the face of his childhood bully. Ida marched toward Izuku. "Midoriya." "Good morning. I am Tenya Ida." "Yeah, I heard," Izuku stammered. "I must apologize." Ida bowed perfectly at a 90-degree angle. "I misjudged you at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test while I was blinded by the surface rules. I hate to admit it, but you are the better student." "Huh?" Izuku blinked. "No, I didn't. I just... Hey! It's the plain-looking guy." Izuku turned to see Ochako Uraraka beaming at him from the doorway. She looked good in the uniform, the gray blazer fitting her better than the tracksuit had. "You got in. I knew you would." She pumped a fist. "That punch was amazing. Or, well, the trip. And the lever thing. It was so cool." Thanks," Izuku blushed. He wasn't used to praise. He was used to being the punchline. "I wonder what we're doing today," Uraraka chirped. "The ceremony? Orientation? If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave." The voice came from the floor. Izuku looked down. A yellow sleeping bag, looking like a giant caterpillar, was lying outside the door. A face peered out, tired eyes, stubble, messy black hair. The man unzipped the bag and stood up, revealing a disheveled black outfit and a capture scarf wrapped around his neck. He pulled a juice pouch from his pocket and slurped it, staring at the class with dead, fish-like eyes. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down," the man said, checking a stopwatch. "Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough." The class went silent. "Who is this?" Izuku analyzed. No costume. Worn-out gear. Those goggles, they hide his line of sight. Capture weapon made of carbon fiber and metal alloy. Underground hero? The man stepped behind the podium. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa." "Nice to meet you, homeroom teacher?" The class gasped. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a stack of blue gym uniforms. "Put these on and meet me on the grounds," he said, turning away. "We're doing a quirk apprehension test." The locker room. The atmosphere in the boys' locker room was tense. The students were sizing each other up. Izuku changed quickly, keeping his head down. He noticed the physical differences. There was a boy with a bird head, dark, brooding. A boy with tape dispensers for elbows, friendly. A tiny boy with purple balls on his head, leering at the wall, presumably thinking about the girl's room. "Hey, Midoriya, right?" Izuku looked up. A boy with spiky red hair and sharp teeth grinned at him. "I'm Kirishima. Eijiro Kirishima." "Man, I heard you got 0 villain points but still got in. That's manly as hell. What's your quirk? Super strength? Invulnerability?" Izuku froze. He had pulled his shirt on, hiding his scars, but he couldn't hide the truth. Izuku hesitated. "If I say I'm quirkless, they'll think I'm joking. Or they'll think I'm a charity case." "He doesn't have one," Bakugo's voice cut through the noise from the corner of the room. He slammed his locker shut. The room went quiet. "What?" Kirishima blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean he's a null," Bakugo spat. "He's quirkless. A pebble. He probably cheated or bribed the judges." Izuku tightened his shoelaces. "I didn't cheat, Kaken." "Then how?" Bakugo stomped over, grabbing Izuku by the collar of his gym uniform. "How did a defect like you get into UA when I worked my ass off?" "Because I saved someone," Izuku said, looking Bakugo in the eye. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "And because I analyzed the test. You just blew things up." "I used my head." Bakugo's hands began to smoke. Hey! Kirishima stepped in, pulling Bakugo back. "Chill out, Bakugo. We're gonna be late for the teacher." Bakugo shoved Izuku away. "Watch your back, Deku. You're going to die out there." Izuku rubbed his neck. He grabbed his notebook and headed for the door. 0 against the world, he thought. Let's see who breaks first. The P grounds. The sun was high and bright. The air smelled of grass and competition. Class 1A stood in a cluster, looking confused. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked. What about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? If you're going to become a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events, Aizawa said, his back to them. He turned around, his hair falling over his face. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He held up a softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance run. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? No quirks allowed. He tossed the ball in the air. The country still uses averages taken from results without quirks. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. Aizawa pointed at Bakugo. Bakugo, you finished first in the entrance exam practical. In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try doing it with your quirk. Bakugo walked to the circle. He stretched his arms, a feral grin spreading across his face. Don't leave the circle, Aizawa instructed. Other than that, anything goes. Bakugo winded up. Explosions crackled around his palms. Dai! Boom! A massive blast propelled the ball into the sky. It soared, leaving a smoke trail, disappearing into the clouds. Aizawa held up his device. It beeped. He turned the screen to the class. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? Are you kidding? This looks like fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want. Awesome! Izuku watched the ball land in the distance. He did the math. Explosive propulsion. Force equals mass times acceleration. He concentrated the blast behind the ball at the exact moment of release. Fun? Aizawa's voice dropped an octave. The class stopped cheering. You have 3 years to become a hero, Aizawa said, his eyes narrowing. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He grinned, a terrifying expression that looked more like a rictus of pain. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential. He brushed his hair back. And will be punished with expulsion. Huh! The scream was collective. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, big accidents, and selfish villains, Aizawa recited. Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered with unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. He looked directly at Izuku. If you wanted to go hang out at Mickey D's after school, you should have gone to a normal high school. For the next 3 years, UA will do everything it can to crush you. Welcome to the hero course. Izuku swallowed hard. Last place gets expelled. He looked at his classmates. Ida engines. Speed specialist. Uraraka, zero gravity. Infinity throw potential. Bakugo, explosions. Versatile. Kirishima, hardening. Strength. Yaoyorozu, creation. Versatile. Izuku looked at his own hands. Me, basic human biology. Peak condition, but human, he was the 0. And in this equation, the 0 was about to be erased. Test 1, 50-meter dash. On your mark. Izuku crouched in the lane next to Ida. Ida has engines on his calves. He needs torque. He'll start slow but accelerate instantly. Me, I need to maximize my start. Explosive plyometrics. Start. Vroom. Ida was a blur. He crossed the line in 3.04 seconds. Izuku sprinted. He kept his form perfect, knees high, arms pumping, head down. He pushed his body to the limit of what 10 months of hell had built. He crossed the line. 7.02 seconds. It was a good time. A great time for a high school freshman. But compared to Ida? Compared to the girl who slid on acid, Mina Ishido? Compared to the boy who blasted himself forward with lasers, Aoyama? He was slow. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku gripped the machine. He squeezed until the veins in his forearm bulged. He visualized crushing coal into diamonds. 56 kilograms. Whoa! 540 kilograms. Izuku looked over. A massive boy with multiple arms, Shoji, was holding the device. Beside him, the rock-like Kirishima hit 400. Izuku sighed. Average. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his naval laser to fly across the sandbox. Bakugo exploded himself across. Tsuyu Ajiri, the frog girl, hopped easily over the entire pit. Izuku stood at the line. Biomechanics. Swing arms. Bend knees. Explode. He jumped. He cleared the sand, landing nicely. A solid jump. But Mineta, the small boy, bounced off his own sticky balls to clear the pit entirely. I'm falling behind, Izuku realized. Every test, I'm in the bottom 3. Test 4, repeated side steps. Mineta was the king here, using his balls to bounce back and forth rapidly. Izuku moved fast, his agility training paying off. He beat the guy with the rock skin, Kirishima, and the guy who shot Sugar, Sato, who were slower and bulkier. Okay. Not last in everything. But the cumulative score. The sun was beginning to dip. The final test approached. Test 5, ball throw. This was the big one. The flashy one. Uraraka stepped up. She touched the ball. She threw it. It floated. And floated. And floated. Aizawa showed the screen. Infinity. Insane, the class whispered. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. He walked to the circle. The ball felt heavy in his hand. Midoriya doesn't have a quirk, right? Whispered Zero, the tape elbow guy. Yeah. How's he gonna do this? He's gonna get expelled for sure. Izuku stood in the circle. He closed his eyes for a second. Analysis. The wind is blowing north and he at approximately 3 meters per second. The ball is standard regulation weight. I can't throw it 700 meters. I can't make it float. But, he thought about the physics of throwing. Torque. Hip rotation. The snap of the wrist. If I use the kinetic chain perfectly, he wound up. He didn't just use his arm. He used his legs, his hips, his core. He whipped his body like a trebuchet. He threw. The ball sailed. It had a good arc. Thump. It landed. 46 meters. Silence. 46 meters? Bakugo laughed. That's pathetic. That's a middle school score. Izuku stared at his hand. 46 meters. It was average, Midoriya, Aizawa said. He walked forward, his scarf floating slightly around his neck. Yes, sensei? I checked the entrance exam footage, Aizawa said, his voice cold. You saved a student. You have tactical sense. You have bravery. He stepped closer, towering over Izuku. But looking at your scores today, you have zero potential. The words cut deep. The Hero Commission is pushing for quirkless integration, Aizawa continued, his eyes glowing red. But it's illogical. If a villain attacks, what will you do? Throw a backpack at them? Analyze them to death while civilians burn? Izuku started. You're a liability, Aizawa stated. If you become a hero, you will die. And more importantly, the people relying on you will die. He pointed at the gate. Pack your things. Go home. Don't waste UA's resources. The class was dead silent. Even Bakugo wasn't laughing anymore. This was brutal. Izuku stood there. His head was down. Go home. Be realistic. Take a swan dive. Izuku clenched his fist. The nails dug into his palm. No. Aizawa raised an eyebrow. No? Izuku looked up. His green eyes were burning. You say I have zero potential because I can't blast a mountain or jump over a building, Izuku said, his voice trembling but gaining volume. You say I'm a liability. He pointed a finger at Aizawa. But you're Eraserhead, aren't you? Aizawa froze. The class murmured. Eraserhead? You're an underground hero, Izuku said, speaking faster now, his analysis mode kicking in. Your quirk allows you to erase the quirks of anyone you look at. But once you blink it's over, and you have dry eye syndrome, so your duration is short. Izuku took a step forward. When your quirk is active, you're quirkless. Just like me. Aizawa's eyes widened slightly. You fight villains who are stronger, faster, and bigger than you, Izuku pressed on. And you beat them. How? With that capture cloth? With martial arts? With fear tactics? Izuku grabbed the ball from the bucket. If you can be a hero while fighting quirkless half the time, then why can't I? Aizawa stared at him. The red glow in his eyes faded. You're comparing yourself to a pro who has trained for decades, Aizawa said quietly. I have tools. I have experience. And I have this, Izuku said. He tapped his head. Give me another throw. Aizawa paused. He looked at the boy. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the calculation. One throw, Aizawa said. If you don't impress me, you're expelled. Effectively immediately, Izuku walked back to the circle. Impress him. Distance isn't impressive. 50 meters, 60 meters, it doesn't matter compared to Bakugo. Think. What is Aizawa looking for? Rationality. Efficiency. Izuku looked at the ball. He looked at the field. He looked at Bakugo, who was smirking. He looked at Uraraka, who looked worried. He looked at Aizawa. He wants to see if I can use what I have. Izuku took a deep breath. He didn't wind up for a distance throw. Instead, he turned his body. He looked at the pile of balls in the bucket next to the circle. He looked at the tree line at the edge of the field, about 50 meters away. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, flat stone he had picked up earlier. Not allowed? He said anything goes as long as I stay in the circle. Izuku wound up. He didn't throw the softball. He threw the stone. He threw it hard, sidearm, skipping it off the grass. It bounced once, twice, picking up speed. At the exact moment the stone skipped, Izuku threw the softball. High. A lob. The stone hit the trunk of a tree. Clack. A massive flock of crows, startled by the noise, erupted from the branches. They flew across the field in a panic. The softball was descending. It fell right into the path of the flock. A crow, blind with panic, collided with the ball. The impact knocked the ball sideways, changing its trajectory, pushing it further, tumbling it through the air with the bird's momentum. The ball rolled. It stopped. 61 meters. It wasn't 700. It wasn't infinity, but it was better than his previous score. And he had used the environment. Izuku turned to Aizawa. I calculated the roosting position of the birds based on the droppings near the fence, Izuku panted. I knew a sudden noise would flush them. I timed the lob to intersect their flight path. It added, roughly 15 meters. The class was silent. He used a bird? Kaminari whispered. Is that allowed? Aizawa stared at the reading. 61 meters. He looked at Izuku. The boy was sweating, trembling, looking like he was about to pass out, but he had solved the problem. Not with power, but with information. Aizawa lowered the device. It was a gamble, Aizawa said harshly. If the bird missed, you would have looked like an idiot, but it didn't miss, Izuku said. Because I practiced that angle for 2 months at the beach. Aizawa's lips twitched. A smile? No, something creepier. Rational, Aizawa muttered. He cleared the screen, moving on. Sit-ups. Izuku exhaled, his knees buckling. He didn't get expelled. Not yet. The results. The sun had set. The floodlights were on. Aizawa projected the rankings onto a hologram. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 18. Toru Hagakure. 19. Minoru Mineta. 20. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared at the bottom of the list. Last place. The silence was heavy. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Yes, sir, Izuku whispered, gripping his pants. He was ready to pack his bag. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the hologram. The expulsion was a lie. Hiya? The class screamed. Izuku's jaw dropped. It was a logical ruse to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa said, a terrifying grin stretching his face. What? Uraraka shouted. That scares me. I knew it. Yaoyorozu, the tall girl with the ponytail, said, sighing. It was obvious. He wouldn't expel a student on the first day. Aizawa looked at Yaoyorozu. Actually, I expelled an entire class last year. They had 0 potential. Yaoyorozu choked. The class went pale. Aizawa walked over to Izuku. He looked down at the boy who was visibly vibrating with relief and residual terror. You placed last in the physical scores, Aizawa said. That is a fact. Your body is weak compared to your peers. He leaned in close. But your mind is dangerous. That bird trick. Don't think you can rely on luck forever. Next time, bring your own tools. If you're going to be a quirkless hero, you better have more than just rocks in your pocket. He turned and walked away. There are handouts in the classroom with the curriculum. Look them over. Midoriya, have the old lady in the infirmary patch up your finger. You scuffed it on that rock. Aizawa zipped himself back into his sleeping bag and inched away like a worm. The class stood there, processing the trauma. That was intense, Zero said. Hey, Midoriya. Ida marched over. That was unconventional, but effective. I see I still have much to learn about situational awareness. You're crazy, man, Kirishima laughed, slapping Izuku on the back. Standing up to a teacher like that? Manly. Izuku smiled, a weak, wobbly thing. He looked over at Bakugo. Bakugo wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the scoreboard where his name was 3, below Yaoyorozu and Todoroki. He was shaking with rage, but for the first time, he didn't attack Izuku. He seemed confused. Izuku picked up his bag. He was dead last. He was the weakest in the class. He was on thin ice with the homeroom teacher, but he was here. He looked at the darkening sky above UA. Zeros and heroes, he thought. The gap is huge. He clenched his fist, feeling the phantom weight of the softball. But it's not infinite. Midoriya-kun! Wait up! Uraraka called out, running to join him. Let's walk to the station together. Okay. As they walked out of the gate, Izuku felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't fear. It was the quiet, burning resolve of someone who had nothing to lose, and everything to prove. The morning sun hit the windows of the UA staff room, casting long, glaring beams of light across the desks. It was quiet, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the aggressive scratching of a pen against paper. Shota Aizawa, eyes bloodshot and dry, was filling out the preliminary student evaluation forms. He hated paperwork. He hated it almost as much as he hated media interviews. You didn't expel anyone yesterday, a booming, yet strangely deflated voice said from the doorway. Aizawa didn't look up. Good morning to you too, All Might. The skeletal form of Toshinori Yagi shuffled into the room, wearing a baggy yellow suit that hung off his sharp shoulders like a tarp on a scarecrow. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound, and sat at the desk opposite Aizawa. I saw the files, All Might said, his voice serious. You expelled an entire class of first years last year. You have a reputation for being merciless. I am rational, Aizawa corrected, finally setting his pen down. He leaned back, the capture scarf around his neck loosening slightly. If a student has no potential, it is cruel to let them chase a dream that will kill them. I simply cut the thread before they hang themselves with it. And yet, All Might pressed, tapping a specific file on Aizawa's desk. Young Midoriya remains. Aizawa looked at the photo of the green-haired boy. In the picture, Midoriya looked terrified, like a rabbit caught in a spotlight. He got last place, Aizawa said flatly. Physically, he is the weakest in the class. By a significant margin. Even the invisible girl has better upper body strength. But he solved the ball throw, Aizawa murmured. He picked up the file. I told them to use their quirks. He doesn't have one. So he used the environment. He used biology. He used probability. He calculated the flight path of a startled bird flock in under 3 seconds. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Heroes rely on power too much. When their quirks don't work, when they face a villain who counters them, or when they're exhausted, they panic. They die. Midoriya. Aizawa tossed the file back onto the desk. Midoriya lives in a constant state of disadvantage. He's already fighting the way I fight when I blink. He has zero potential as a powerhouse, yes. But as a tactician? As a survivor? Aizawa stood up, grabbing a jelly pouch from his drawer. He's the only one in that class who understands that he's mortal. That fear, it makes him dangerous. I want to see what he does when the safety rails are taken off. All Might stared at the file, a small smile touching his lips. I see. You're kinder than you look, Aizawa-kun. Don't be disgusting, Aizawa grunted, walking out the door. I'm just logical. Class 1A classroom, 8:20 a.m. The second day of school was, in many ways, harder than the first. On the first day, there was the adrenaline of the new. On the second day, reality set in. Izuku sat at his desk, his notebook open. He wasn't writing about heroes today. He was writing about his classmates. Ida Tenya engine. Heavy torque, poor turning radius at high speeds. Needs wide spaces. Uraraka Ochako, zero gravity. Nausea limit. Can she float herself? Bakugo Katsuki, explosion. Right hook lead in. Sweat production increases over time. Izuku felt a burning gaze on the side of his head. He didn't turn. He knew who it was. Bakugo hadn't spoken a word since the previous evening. He sat at his desk, staring at the blackboard with an intensity that threatened to melt the chalk. The silence was worse than the screaming. When Bakugo screamed, Izuku knew what to expect. This silence was the calm before a nuclear detonation. Hey, Midoriya! Izuku jumped. Eijiro Kirishima dragged a chair over, grinning. I was thinking about that ball throw yesterday, Kirishima said, loud enough for half the class to hear. That was nuts. Using a rock to hit a bird? Who even thinks of that? It was just luck, Izuku lied, waving his hands. Coincidence? Nah, man, Denki Kaminari chimed in, leaning over the back of his chair. Aizawa-sensei said you calculated it. That's some big brain energy. You must be super smart, huh? I like to analyze things, Izuku mumbled. It is a useful skill, Ida announced, chopping the air. While physical prowess is essential, the ability to assess a situation is the hallmark of a leader. I must redouble my efforts in my studies. Izuku looked around. They weren't mocking him. They were curious. In Aldera Junior High, being quirkless meant being invisible, or being a punching bag. Here, among the elite, being quirkless but passing the exam made him an anomaly. A puzzle. But still, a voice said from the back. It was Mineta. If a villain comes at you, you can't throw a bird at them, right? Isn't it kinda dangerous for you to be here? The air in the room grew heavy. It was the question everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to ask. Izuku gripped his pen. Yeah, Izuku said softly. He looked up, meeting Mineta's gaze. It is dangerous. That's why I have to work twice as hard as everyone else. Mineta blinked, surprised by the honesty. TCH. The sound came from Bakugo. He stood up, kicking his chair back. He walked to the door, shouldering past Izuku without looking at him. Move, Deku. Sorry, Kaken. As Bakugo left the room, Kirishima whispered, what's his deal? You guys know each other, right? We grew up together, Izuku said, staring at the empty doorway. It's complicated. Period 1 English. Which sentence is wrong? Present Mike screamed, striking a pose at the podium. Everybody hands up. The class was normal. Surprisingly normal. For all the talk of heroics, Yue was still a high school. Izuku found solace in the academics. This was a battlefield he understood. While some of the physical powerhouses struggled with the relative pronoun clauses, Izuku's hand shot up. The relative pronoun is misplaced in sentence 4, Izuku answered clearly. Yeah. Correct. Present Mike pointed a finger gun at him. Plus ultra grammar. Izuku smiled slightly. He could do this. He could survive the classroom. Period 4 Modern Hero Art History. Midnight was the teacher. The R-rated hero. She was talking about the evolution of vigilante laws during the pre-quirk era. Midoriya, she called out, tapping her whip against the board. Why was the Vigilante Act of 21XX considered a failure? Because it defined heroism solely by quirk usage, Izuku answered immediately, standing up. It criminalized citizens who used quirks for self-defense, creating a black market for protection and leading to the rise of organized villainy groups like the Destro Army. It ignored the root cause, societal instability, and focused on symptom management. Midnight raised an eyebrow. The class stared. Detailed, she purred. And correct. You've done your reading. Izuku sat down. He saw Yayorozu looking at him with a respectful nod. He wasn't the strongest. But he wasn't useless. Lunch rush. The cafeteria was a masterpiece of culinary engineering. The cook hero, Lunch Rush, was churning out gourmet meals at the speed of sound. Izuku sat with Ida and Uraraka. It was a strange feeling, having people to sit with. This rice is exquisite, Ida proclaimed, eating with robotic precision. It's so good. Uraraka stuffed her face. I usually just eat mochi for lunch to save money, but this is cheap and amazing. Izuku poked at his Katsudan. He was thinking about the afternoon. Hero basic training, Izuku muttered. It's in the afternoon block. I wonder what we'll be doing. Combat, probably. Uraraka said. I'm nervous. I'm not good at fighting yet. I am prepared. Ida said. I have reviewed the regulations for quirks in public spaces, Midoriya, a voice said. Izuku looked up. It was Todoroki. The boy with the split-colored hair and the burned scar. He held a tray of soba. Can I sit here? Sure. Izuku shifted over. Todoroki sat down. He ate in silence for a full minute, the air around him noticeably colder than the rest of the cafeteria. Todoroki said suddenly, looking at Izuku. Why yes? Aizawa-sensei seems to have an interest in you. Izuku blinked. He does. He threatened expulsion, Todoroki said calmly. But he rescinded it. He called it a logical ruse. But Aizawa is known for actually expelling people. He kept you. Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes bored into Izuku. You have no quirk. Yet you are here. Are you? Todoroki hesitated. Are you hiding something? Like a latent power? No, Izuku said quickly. I'm really quirkless. I check the details. That's all. Todoroki stared at him for another long moment, then went back to his soba. I see. Then you are fighting an uphill battle. I know, Izuku said. Good luck, Todoroki said. It didn't sound sarcastic. It sounded like a warning. Afternoon. Hero basic training. The classroom was buzzing. This was it. The reason they were all here. The door burst open. I am here. All Might marched into the room, wearing his Silver Age costume. His cape fluttered dramatically despite the lack of wind, coming through the door like a hero. Whoa! It's really him. Look at that costume. He's huge. Izuku felt a lump in his throat. Even after the rejection on the roof, seeing All Might in person, it still commanded awe. The man was a living sun. Welcome to Hero Basic Training. All Might flexed. Here, we build the foundation of your heroism. And today, we start with this. He held up a card that said Battle, Combat Training. Bakugo's grin returned, sharp and predatory. And to go with that, All Might pressed a button on a remote. The wall lined with numbered suitcases popped open. Your costumes. Made based on your quirk registrations and requests. Awesome. Get changed and meet at Ground Beta. Ground Beta, the locker room. Izuku held his case, number 18. It felt heavy. He hadn't submitted a complex request form to the support company. He didn't have a quirk to enhance. He didn't need heat resistance or conduits. He opened the case. Inside was a green jumpsuit. It was simple. Rugged material. Reinforced knee and elbow pads. He pulled it out. A note fell from the folds. Izuku, I know you said you didn't need anything fancy, but I bought the best fire-resistant material I could afford. And I reinforced the stitching. It looks a bit like the drawing you made when you were little. I hope it fits. Do your best, my hero. Mom. Izuku felt his eyes burn. He wiped them quickly before anyone saw. He put it on. It was snug. The respirator mask he had designed, to filter dust and gas, hung around his neck. The long ears on the hood, a homage to All Might's hair tufts, flopped slightly. It looked homemade. It looked plain. He looked in the mirror. He didn't look like a symbol of peace. He looked like a grunt. A soldier. Good, Izuku thought. Soldiers survive. He reached into his bag and pulled out the items Aizawa had told him to bring. Your own tools. He strapped the yellow utility belt around his waist. He filled the pouches. Capture tape, borrowed from the support supply closet. Flashlight. Smoke pellets, homemade, sugar and potassium nitrate base. The collapsible metal baton. He strapped the baton to his thigh. Hey, Midoriya! Uraraka waved at him as they walked out of the tunnel. Whoa! You look practical. Uraraka was wearing a skin-tight pink and black suit. She flushed red. Mine is a bit tight. I should have been more specific with the design. It suits you, Izuku said, trying not to stare. The boots have shock absorption for landing, right? Yeah. And your costume? It's sturdy, Izuku said, pulling his gloves tight. That's all I need. The setup. All Might stood before the class. The students looked incredible. They looked like heroes. Ida looked like a knight in armor. Bakugo had massive grenade gauntlets. Kirishima was shirtless with gears. You all look cool. All Might gave a thumbs up. Now, shall we begin? Ida raised his hand. Sensei. This is the same battle center from the entrance exam. Will we be conducting urban maneuvering again? No. All Might shook his head. Villain cleanup is usually seen outdoors, but statistically, the most heinous crimes happen indoors. Imprisonment, house arrest, backroom deals. In this society of heroes, intelligent villains hide in the shadows. Izuku nodded. True. CQC, close quarters combat, is essential. For this class, you will be split into villains and heroes. 2-on-2 indoor battles, without basic training? Tsuya asked. This is a real battle to understand the basics. The goal, villains guard a nuclear weapon, it's papier-mâché. Heroes must capture the villains or secure the weapon within the time limit. All Might held up a yellow box. Teams will be decided by lottery. Is that haphazard? Ida asked. Pros often have to team up with heroes from other agencies on the spot. All Might improvised. It is realistic. Izuku watched as names were drawn. Team A, Uraraka Ochako Midoriya Izuku. Team B, Shoji Mizo Todoroki Shoto. Team D, Bakugo Katsuki Ida Tenya. Izuku froze. Bakugo. The first matchup is... All Might pulled 2 balls from the boxes. Team A, heroes, versus Team D, villains. The world seemed to stop spinning. Izuku looked across the crowd. Bakugo was already looking at him. The grenade gauntlets on his arms gleamed in the sunlight. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was focused. It was the look of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. Team D, head inside and set up. Team A, you have 5 minutes to plan. The planning phase. Izuku and Uraraka stood outside the building. Uraraka was doing deep knee bends to calm her nerves. Wow, she exhaled. First match. And against Bakugo. He looks really scary. He is, Izuku said quietly. He pulled out a floor plan of the building that All Might had provided. Midoriya-kun? Uraraka looked at him. You're shaking. Izuku looked at his hand. It was vibrating. I've been scared of Kaken my whole life, Izuku admitted. He's amazing. He's talented. He has everything I don't. A powerful quirk, confidence, instinct. He looked up at the concrete building. But, because I've been watching him my whole life, I know him. Izuku opened his pouch and checked his capture tape. I know how he starts a fight. I know his right hook. I know he gets tunnel vision when he's angry. He turned to Uraraka. His eyes were still filled with fear, but behind the fear was the cold, hard steel of the logical ruse. Uraraka-san. We can win this. But we can't fight them fair. What do you mean? Ida is diligent, Izuku explained, pointing at the blueprint. He'll stay with the weapon. He'll secure the room. He takes rules seriously. But Kaken, Izuku tapped the entrance. Kaken won't care about the weapon. He's coming for me. He wants to prove that I'm a failure. That I'm a bug to be crushed. So, he'll leave the weapon unguarded? Exactly. We're going to split up. Split up? Uraraka blinked. But you'll be alone against him. That's the point, Izuku said. I'm the bait. He tightened his mask. I can't beat him in a contest of power. But this isn't a fighting tournament. It's a battle trial. The objective is the weapon. Izuku looked at Uraraka with intense seriousness. I'll draw his fire. I'll take him into the corridors where he can't use his big explosions without bringing the ceiling down. You use your quirk to float yourself, make yourself silent, and find the weapon. When I give the signal, you secure it. But Midoriya, can you survive against him? Izuku remembered the sludge villain. He remembered the feeling of clawing at the mud. He remembered Aizawa's words. Bring your own tools. He patted the baton on his leg. I don't have to beat him, Izuku whispered. I just have to survive him. Start. All Might's voice boomed over the speakers. Izuku and Uraraka climbed through the window. The air inside was cool and smelled of dust. The corridors were narrow concrete tubes. They moved silently. Izuku took the lead, using hand signals he had read about in a tactical manual. Thump. Thump. Footsteps. Heavy. Unhidden. He's here, Izuku whispered. Go. Now. Uraraka nodded. She touched her chest, floated, and pushed off the wall, drifting up toward the ventilation shaft they had spotted. Izuku stood alone in the hallway. He waited. A shadow stretched around the corner. Deku! Bakugo exploded around the corner. He didn't run. He used his blast to propel himself, moving faster than a human should. He was a missile. I knew you'd be here! Bakugo roared, swinging his right arm. A massive explosion charged in his palm. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't cower. Analysis. Right swing. Wide arc. He leads with his shoulder. Izuku stepped forward. What? Bakugo's eyes widened. Usually, Deku ran away. Izuku ducked under the swing. The heat of the explosion singed his hood, but the blast went over his head. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's outstretched arm with both hands. He planted his foot. He used Bakugo's own momentum. Judo throw, Nage. Izuku twisted his hips and heaved. Bakugo, midair and off balance, flipped over Izuku's shoulder. Wham! Bakugo slammed into the concrete floor, hard. The wind was knocked out of him. Izuku didn't stop. He didn't gloat. He scrambled back, putting distance between them. I told you, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice trembling but loud. I'm not the same Deku anymore. Bakugo coughed, pushing himself up. His eyes were vibrating with shock. Then, the shock turned into pure, white-hot fury. You! Bakugo growled, sparks flying from his hands. You read my moves? You think you can analyze me? He stood up. The explosions in his hands grew brighter, louder. I'm going to hurt you, Deku. Really hurt you. Izuku reached for his flash grenade. Come and try. Observation room. The class watched the screens in stunned silence. Did you see that? Kirishima shouted. He threw Bakugo. He actually threw him. His form was perfect, Sato noted. He used Bakugo's speed against him. All Might watched the screen, gripping the podium. He saw the look in young Midoriya's eyes. It wasn't the look of a fanboy. It was the look of a professional. He's not fighting with power, All Might realized. He's fighting with information. He's turned this battle into a chess match. Midoriya Shonen, All Might whispered. Show them. Show them that power isn't everything. On the screen, Bakugo launched himself again, screaming. Izuku turned and ran into the labyrinth of the building, leading the monster into his trap. The logical ruse had begun. The concrete floor was cold, but Katsuki Bakugo's back was burning. For a heartbeat, a single, fractured second that felt like an eternity, the world made no sense. He was looking at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights buzzed like flies. The air smelled of dust and the faint, sweet scent of his own nitroglycerin sweat. He had been thrown. He, the prodigy, the future #1, the boy who had aced the practical exam with the highest score in UA history, had been thrown onto his back. And looking down at him, with a face that was a mask of terrified determination, was Deku. I told you, Kaken, Izuku said, his voice trembling but cutting through the silence of the corridor. I'm not the same Deku anymore. The words didn't compute. They were static in Bakugo's ears. Deku was a pebble on the side of the road. Deku was the bug you stepped on without noticing. Bugs didn't know judo. Bugs didn't read your movements. You! The growl started low in Bakugo's throat. His vision swam with red. The shock evaporated, replaced instantly by a white-hot, blinding rage that felt like magma pumping through his veins. You bastard! Bakugo slammed his palms into the floor. Boom! The explosion propelled him upward. He didn't stand up. He launched himself. He spun in the air, righting himself with the grace of a feral cat, landing in a crouch 5 meters away. Smoke curled from his hands. His teeth were bared in a snarl that was less human and more beast. You read me? Bakugo hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You think because you followed me around like a stalker for 10 years, you can beat me? You think memorizing my moves makes up for being worthless? Izuku didn't answer. He didn't stay to chat. The moment Bakugo had hit the floor, Izuku was already moving. He turned on his heel, the rubber soles of his reinforced boots gripping the concrete, and sprinted down the hallway. He turned the corner sharp, his hand brushing the wall for balance, and vanished into the labyrinth of the battle center. "Don't you turn your back on me!" Bakugo screamed. He ignited his palms. Explosions cracked like thunder. He shot forward, flying down the corridor, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Deku! The observation room. The screens flickered with the live feed. The class watched in a stunned, heavy silence. He actually ran away, Kaminari muttered, blinking. After that awesome throw? I thought they were gonna brawl. Running is the logical choice, Momo Yaoyorozu said, her eyes glued to the monitor showing Izuku's retreating figure. Midoriya has no quirk. In a sustained close-quarters engagement against an explosion quirk, his stamina and durability are at a massive disadvantage. He created an opening and retreated to reset the engagement terms. It's highly tactical. Manly as hell to throw him, though. Kirishima grinned, pumping a fist. Did you see that counter? He used Bakugo's own speed. All Might stood at the podium, his hands gripping the metal so hard it was beginning to warp. Underneath his confident smile, a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. Young Midoriya, you've stepped into the ring, All Might thought. But angering young Bakugo is like poking a sleeping dragon. Can you survive the fire? On the screen, Bakugo turned the corner, blasting the wall in frustration when he saw an empty hallway. Come out, you nerd! Stop hiding. The third floor, north corridor. Izuku pressed his back against a concrete pillar, his chest heaving. He pulled his respirator mask up over his mouth and nose. The air in the building was already getting hazy with smoke from Bakugo's pursuit. Check pulse. 140 BPM. Adrenaline spike. Focus. He tapped the earpiece in his helmet. Uraraka-san, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant booming of explosions. Status? Static crackled. I'm on the 4th floor. I found the weapon room. It's in the center of the open storage area. But Ida-kun is there. He's doing something weird. Weird? He's taken everything out of the room. There's nothing for me to float. And he's monologuing about being evil. Izuku allowed himself a microscopic smile. Ida really gets into character. Listen, Uraraka-san. Stay hidden. Do not engage Ida yet. He has the speed advantage in that open room. If he sees you, he'll capture you before you can touch the weapon. But what about you? Bakugo sounds like he's tearing the building apart. I'm fine, Izuku lied. The floor beneath his boots vibrated as another explosion rocked the building. I'm keeping him busy. He's not thinking about the weapon anymore. He's hunting me. That leaves Ida alone. Midoriya-kun, don't die, okay? I won't. I have a plan. Midoriya out? Izuku cut the comms. He took a deep breath, filtering the dust through his mask. He reached into his utility belt and pulled out his collapsible metal baton. With a flick of his wrist, it snapped open, a sleek, black steel rod, waited for impact. He wasn't All Might. He couldn't smash through walls. He couldn't tank explosions, but he knew this building. He had memorized the blueprints during the 5 minutes of prep time. Corridor C4. Narrow. Structural supports every 3 meters. Low ceiling. It was a kill box. Or, if used correctly, a cage. Izuku moved. He didn't run at full sprint. He moved with the stealth steps he had practiced in the dojo, rolling his feet from heel to toe to silence his impact. He wasn't a hero right now. He was a ghost. Where are you? Bakugo's voice was getting closer. He was brute-forcing his way through the search, checking every room by blasting the doors off their hinges. Izuku stopped at the intersection of Corridor C4. He pulled a small, round object from his pouch. It looked like a marble wrapped in paper, a homemade flashbang, crafted from magnesium powder and a friction igniter. Primitive, but effective. He tossed it down the hallway he had just come from, bouncing it off the wall so it landed just around the corner. Then, he waited. 3 seconds later, Bakugo appeared at the far end of the hall. There you are! Bakugo saw the shadow. He raised his gauntlet. Snap flash. The ball detonated with a blinding white light and a sharp crack. Gah! Bakugo flinched, throwing his arm up to shield his eyes. Cheap tricks. Izuku didn't attack. He used the second of blindness to slip into corridor C4, making sure his boots scuffed the floor loudly enough to be heard. Over here, Kaken! You're dead! Bakugo recovered instantly, tears streaming from his irritated eyes, and launched himself after the sound. He turned into corridor C4, and stopped. The hallway was tight. Barely wide enough for two people to walk abreast. The ceiling was low, heavy with industrial piping. At the other end, 20 meters away, stood Izuku. He held the baton in a defensive stance, his green jumpsuit blending into the shadows. Stop running, Bakugo growled, his palms crackling. Face me. I'm right here, Izuku said calmly. But you might want to check your surroundings, Kaken. Large-scale explosions in a confined space like this? You'll blow out the support pillars. The ceiling will collapse on both of us. Bakugo's eye twitched. He looked at the pillars. He looked at Izuku. You think I care? Bakugo sneered. I can fine-tune my blasts. I don't need a nuke to kill a fly. Bakugo raised his right hand, aiming not at Izuku, but at the wall beside him. Boom! He used the blast to propel himself forward, ricocheting off the wall. He was a pinball of kinetic energy, bouncing from wall to floor to ceiling, closing the distance in zigzags. He's using the walls to boost speed without large blasts, Izuku analyzed instantly. Fast. Too fast for the eye to track comfortably. Izuku didn't try to track him visually. He listened. Left wall. Ceiling. Right wall. Now. Izuku dropped to the floor, sliding forward. Bakugo lunged from the air, a localized explosion aimed right where Izuku's head had been a millisecond before. The heat scorched Izuku's hair as he slid underneath the attack. Izuku swung the baton upward. It wasn't a lethal strike. He aimed for the ulnar nerve cluster on the inside of Bakugo's elbow, the funny bone. Crack. Arg. Bakugo's arm went numb. The explosion he had been charging fizzled out. He tumbled, landing on his feet but clutching his arm. You hit me with a stick? Bakugo roared, incredulous. You brought a toy to a quirk fight? It's a telescopic baton, Izuku corrected, scrambling to his feet and backing away. Standard police issue for subduing quirk criminals. It extends my reach. I'll extend your face. Bakugo charged again. This time, he didn't bounce. He rushed straight in, leading with his left hand since his right was tingling. Izuku parried. He used the baton to deflect Bakugo's wrist, pushing the explosion to the side. The blast scorched the wall, showering them both in concrete dust. It was a dance of death. Bakugo was relentless, a storm of fire and force. Izuku was fluid, a leaf in the hurricane. He dodged, parried, and retreated. Block. Duck. Slide. Bat away the hand. Izuku was taking damage. The shockwaves were rattling his teeth. His jumpsuit was singed in a dozen places. A glancing blow to his shoulder felt like a sledgehammer. He's getting faster, Izuku realized with a spike of fear. He's sweating more. The explosions are getting stronger. Stop dodging! Bakugo panted, swinging a massive left hook. Izuku leaned back, the explosion missing his nose by an inch. The heat blistered his skin. Why won't you use it? Bakugo screamed, pressing the attack. Why won't you use your quirk? Izuku froze for a microsecond. What? Bakugo capitalized on the pause. He kicked Izuku in the stomach. Gah! Izuku flew backward, slamming into the concrete wall. The air left his lungs. He slid down, gasping, clutching his bruised abdomen. Bakugo loomed over him, smoke rising from his body. He looked deranged. You think I'm stupid? Bakugo spat. You did something to the robot. You threw that ball. And now you're keeping up with me. You've been hiding it, haven't you? You've been laughing at me this whole time.